Welcome to The Outlet, where we keep you plugged in to everything energy. To lead the charge, here's your host, Tom Glanzer.
Well, welcome to Northwestern Energy's The Outlet. You'll notice we changed things up a little bit, and we got our podcast room is done. We have some of the technology working, some of it isn't. And I thought I better bring on the person that gave me the right to do this podcast, my boss. You've been my boss for 20 years. Can you believe this?
No, I can't, actually. I feel like we just hired you. Maybe 5 years ago? 7?
Yeah, 7, maybe. I'm probably like having an extra teenager around the house since you got rid of Jackson. Now I'm your only teenager
but
left.
I do remember, Tom, it must have been a while because I do remember giving Jackson's baby clothes to you.
Yes, we have hand-me-down baby clothes from, and our kids are
now, so
they're all gone to college now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's 24.
Bobbi Schroeppel is the Vice President of Customer Care, Human Resources, Corporate Communication. Is there another one in there?
Not in the title, but some other duties would be labor safety and energy efficiency and demand-side management.
I forget about demand-side management of Montana. So, Bobbi, we have gone through a lot in this business in the last 20 years, you and I. But you had a career before your more corporate end of your career. I want you to go way back. How did you get started in the energy business totally?
Well, it's by accident. I had graduated from college, and it was right around in the early 90s when we were in a recession. So jobs were somewhat hard to come by, and we were moving out to a smaller town outside of Minneapolis. My husband was going to go into the family law practice, and I really didn't want to commute my entire life, into downtown Minneapolis or somewhere in Minneapolis to work for a larger corporation. I thought we would spend our entire existence in this small town, that he would stay at the law practice. So I knew if I got into a large corporation, that at some point to go anywhere, you're probably going to move. So I had a neighbor. We bought a house, and I had a neighbor who worked for a company called Right Hand Electric, and they happened to be hiring dispatchers, and both electric and home security dispatchers. And it was 7 miles down the road, so she got me an interview, and I honestly thought I was going to interview for like an electrician, and I really didn't understand what the heck I was going to do working for an electrician. Of course, it didn't take me very long to figure out, what was going on. And, I hadn't really thought about it. I think my parents had been served by what was called Northern States Power at the time, and I, like most people, didn't really think about the fact that there are different utilities out there and there are different utility models. Of course, I think about it a lot now. So I did that for about I had a number of different roles with them, but about 3.5, 4 years. I did go out in the field as their first female electric use consultant, so worked a lot with contractors and homeowners on off-peak metering and demand-side management types of things, and then ultimately came back in, put my college degrees a little bit more to use, which was sociology and statistics, and started doing some market research for them. And then got a phone call about a job at Northwestern Energy and in Huron, South Dakota. And I was like, okay. That's what I thought. Why not? Why not hear them out? Red Hennepin was smaller, so I knew there wasn't going to be as much, long-term growth opportunity. Great co-op. So I don't want to say anything but good things about them. So anyway, ended up coming out to Huron to interview. Got a job offer in market research and marketing, and 27 years later, here I am.
I always find that amazing when you go to college for something like you have, and your passion is statistics, because when you talk about statistics, sometimes it's dumbfounding. And to take what your passion was and roll it into a career that you just kind of happenstanced upon, to have such a rewarding career this late in the game, as far as, when you look back at that wasn't chance. That was actually like, this is what you were meant to do, because the passion that I see in you feeds through to everybody around, your entire team and beyond. And did you ever think that energy would be something that would hold your attention?
No, but it didn't take me long. Like most employees that come to a company like Northwestern and end up staying and having a long career here, or in our industry in general, it doesn't take very long in the right culture and the right energy company to realize how quickly what we do is so foundational to just everything that goes on in this country. And if you think about, we're at our best when things are at their worst, right? When there's, massive storms going through or whatever, and how we have such a unique and foundational purpose. So it didn't take me very long to grasp that, and we hear that from employees all the time, and including new hires. They're here for a matter of months, and they're like, "Oh, I get it. This is really special work."
Let's go back. Let's do some best and favorites. So, you're the biggest storm you ever went through.
Oh, you know what that one is.
Is it 05?
It was the 2005 ice storm in South Dakota, bar none. I think that at the peak of that storm, we had about 85% of our customers out of power. Fortunately, we were able to get, large percentages of them back on within 24 hours, but they were hanging on by a thread, if you recall, Tom, and those, single feed transmission lines coming into our bigger cities. And the thing that made that ice storm so unique from my perspective is generally ice storms of that magnitude, you often see them going down just another notch or so south of us, more down through like Oklahoma and Kansas and whatnot. But do you remember how much snow we got? And then it was sub-zero temperatures for days. So it
2
didn't
weeks.
melt. Nothing melted. It just kept piling on. And, there were blizzard conditions. And it was, I remember, just what the state had to do to plow roads so that our crews could come through North Dakota and come down into South Dakota, because North Dakota didn't get hit like we did. So we could get, MDU out here. We could get Black Hills from the west. I think we had Excel, Otter Tail folks in town. And that's when you really, speaking of special, that's when you really, really understand what this industry is about. There is no other industry that rallies like our industry to help out another company.
I'm going to take another path because I just thought of this. I was only 6 months on with the company.
Yep.
And there was another, probably 4 or 5 other people that were very young with the company. I saw a change, a shift in Northwestern Energy. Did that storm redefine Northwestern Energy just because of the fact that Montana had to work with South Dakota and we really had to integrate things?
Yeah, I think that storm probably took years off of our cultural integration in a good way. I think prior to that there was a lot of animosity, kind of, the smaller utility buys the bigger utility, and, all of that. And some of the first crews to roll into town were folks out of Montana that drove all night, came through North Dakota, and after and some of them, I think, spent weeks helping clean up, but at least, 2 to 4 weeks, even after we got the power back on, helping to clean stuff up. And I remember talking to some of the Montana crews, and they would say, the South Dakota system is small, but I think they gained an appreciation for how well built and how well engineered and well built it was when they came and worked on it. And because it really is, I would argue, probably one of the premier systems in this country, which is why it's so reliable.
Talk about the biggest success you've had, the thing that you've been the most proud of at Northwestern.
Oh, I think the role that I've played in getting the company where it's at today. I think in the fact that what we just talked about, the fact that there is virtually none of that us versus them. It's like, what, we're proud of Old Northwestern Public Service, we're proud of Montana Power, but I do believe that we have a culture now where everybody realizes we are better and stronger together. And I think the way we have this company structured, it's very flat. Most of our leaders, have responsibility for that function across the entire company. Certainly in the support services at the corporate level, but even in communications, we don't necessarily operate in silos. And I think that looking at the culture we have today, compared to where we were 20 years ago, I think is an amazing story.
I'm going to give you a second to brag, and the statistics are going to come out for sure. Bobbi's in charge of the call center. And I believe all of us internally are extremely proud that our call center is internal. They're our employees. And they take care of thousands of phone calls a day. And that has not always been super streamlined, but you've streamlined it. And just talk about the graduation of that from just a straight call-in center to the machine that it is now.
Yeah, well, and I have to give a lot of credit to a lot of other individuals, Lori St. Aub and Tricia Davis. I mean, there's a number of, our supervisors. But, yes, I mean, that's been a journey. If you recall, Tom, up until I think it was 2014 or so, we operated 2 billing systems. So we were fairly we were exchanging calls between the South Dakota call center and the Montana call center. But really putting that common billing system in really pushed us over the edge and allowed us to bring everything together. So we went through a period there where you were either in Butte, Montana in the call center, or you were in Huron. But we just continued to get better and more integrated and stronger. And today you just call one of the 800 numbers, and it doesn't matter. You're going to go to whichever person is available to serve you the fastest. So we've got Montana customers talking to people in South Dakota on a regular basis, and it's complimenting them all the time and vice versa. But then and we've been able to put in a lot of technology. I mean, where we are today with, our technology platforms that allow us to run those contact centers, and then to get into, artificial intelligence and sentiment analysis, and I could go on and on. But there's just great stuff great stuff already and great stuff on the horizon. But the other thing I want to touch on that I never thought I would be a proponent of, but I am, and that is the work from home customer service agent. And that came about during COVID because we wanted to try to figure out how to keep our workforce healthy. Unfortunately, we had just done that big Genesis platform upgrade. We wouldn't have been able to do what we did if we hadn't gone live on that thing. I think we went live December or January, and by March, the wheels were coming off the COVID bus. We've maintained that model, and it, I think, has really opened up the recruiting. I mean, we've got customer service agents in Glasgow, Montana. We've got them in Nebraska. We've got them all over eastern South Dakota, Montana. And, they're all just one big machine, working to serve customers. And they do more than take calls. They handle email and other types of requests. But they're a great group.
I do miss all the food that used to be in the call center all the time.
Yeah,
because
that's one of the downsides.
That's one of the downsides, but
we don't have Soup Wednesdays anymore.
Yeah, no Soup Wednesdays, no Popcorn Fridays, but
No.
I do see those folks are still engaged. They're not just these remote employees that you never deal with. We have volunteer events, and they're there, and that's a testament to the company and the company giving them the opportunity to still be at home, but yet still really a part of this company.
Yeah, they do. They love the opportunity to step up and engage, and we've the leadership team works hard to work with the local operating teams, because if you're a remote CSR or agent, you might actually be in the Missoula division, or you might be in the Aberdeen division, or you might be in the Yankton division. So we do try to make sure that they have relationships with that local operating team, because that's where they're going to get those type of opportunities, right? Is to make sure that they're plugged in and that they're being invited in and can come in when we do the day of giving or day of caring or whatever it is. But they do enjoy it, because while they like working from home, most of them will tell you, they also are, they want to socialize, right? But we also do other things like we'll have customer service week where we go around and have get together and do events and then we bring them into the 2 different call centers, off and on, just because I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for people to know their coworkers and get out of their house once in a while and go do their job from an office location.
Talk about the HR side of your job. What you can't spend equal time on all of them. Which one takes the most of your time?
Honestly, it depends on the day or the week. I would say right now You know what, it varies. It really depends on what's going on. It depends on, like what might be on the board agenda, like if I'm doing, in July, for example, I'll spend a lot of time leading up to that on HR because that's deep dive into HR type stuff. But then, other parts of the year, it's all about customer experience. And it ebbs and it flows. So I would say it's all fairly balanced, and I try to keep it balanced. But the reality of it is that the customer care organization, as is HR and corporate communications, they all have very strong leadership teams in them. So they're all very, very well run, which means that I don't have to spend a lot of my time on day-to-day activities. They, when they need some day-to-day help, they'll reach out, but try to spend more time on strategy.
So the community relations managers are not your problem child? Is that what I'm hearing? Good.
No.
All right, well, let's go to HR. The workforce really retired in the last COVID, a little bit before COVID and then after COVID. When you think about the utility business, how has hiring changed since before, and what trends are you seeing that either worry you or make you excited to see what the next generation is going to be?
Well, so you remember the Great Recession of 2008? I think we were, at that point in time, our average kind of retirement, because we do have nice benefits and retirement benefits, so most employees can generally, retire maybe a little earlier than you might in other industries. Anytime somebody kind of hit 60 to 62, and they've, been with the company for so many, kind of the rule of 85, we would start seeing them retire. Then we saw almost overnight, couple years added on to that when we went into the Great Recession. Maybe have gone back a little bit, but I feel like we sort of kept a hold of some of that, uptick where people started to stick around more like 63, 64. So, COVID, so we were predicting that we were going to have, not, I wouldn't even call it a wave. I would call it steady waves. It's been, and we knew it was going to go on for years. Where you were just going to have higher retirement levels, and we have seen that, and it's been manageable. I think if we were to have any kind of significant economic slowdown, I could see some people putting their retirement plans off, for a year or two, and all of a sudden they look at their 401k and they go, eh. But it used to be we didn't hire. We hardly hired. And if you were going to get into Northwestern Energy, you basically got lucky, or you came in, in an apprentice program, or you came in as a customer service representative. And, that's all changed. So, and just the way we recruit, you used to literally, Tom, you just put it in the local newspaper, and now we're on all the job boards, we're actually using AI to some extent with with getting our jobs out there. So we are, but like right now, and this is just my gut, but I do think we're seeing a return towards an appreciation for the stability of the company. I think there's been enough shakeup in other industries, and including on, what's going on at the federal level. There are a lot of people out there that are either unemployed or afraid they're going to be, that I think are looking at companies like Northwestern through a, I'd like to be their lens when, we've never had a hard time hiring, but
right.
3 or 4 years ago, there were certain positions in IT and whatnot that I think, we were struggling more. That has changed pretty quickly overnight. The other thing that's changing is, as more and more companies are pulling back on their work from home and telling people, hey, we want to see you in the office more, it's working to our advantage. Because we kind of we have a hybrid policy, but for the most part we make no bones about it. We are a work from office company because a lot of our workforce can't work from home, and we want everybody to be there. So, but I think you're seeing, and the other thing that I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, you're seeing for about kind of from COVID until recently there was what you call frequent job jumpers, the people that were, moving around from one job to the next, they were getting rewarded financially to do that. That gap has gone away now. And the people who actually stayed in their career at their existing employer are now kind of financially almost as well off as the people that jump jobs, but then subsequently maybe lost them or are facing pay cuts, because of tightening the belt. So you're seeing that go on. And I just think right now we're seeing our applicant pools are very strong. We're seeing jobs that we had open for a couple of years filling, and not only that, in some instances we're seeing 2 or 3 applicants we want to hire, and in some cases we're hiring more than we were expecting to hire for that role. Linemen, same thing. I mean, I think it's just changing. It's stabilized. It's stabilizing, and I think the question is going to be, where does it go from here? And I don't think anybody really knows, because I think it's going to depend on what happens with the economy.
And going back to your statement about you either started as a call center person, you got lucky, or you were recruited. I'm a lucky one, by the way. I know that the sports TV guy was not prepared for what I got into, but it's been an amazing run. And I sit around tables all the time, and I listen to engineers talk about all the different things that we talk about around the table, and I'm like, how in the world did I end up here, and how did I glean all this knowledge? But you hang around enough smart people for 20 years, and you're gonna take some of that with you. I think of another situation where the technology in the utility business has progressed to the point where our former CEO Bob Rowe always said that you don't buy things until the technology is affordable. And business at the speed of technology, I think, is what he said.
Business at the speed of, or technology at the speed
technology
of value.
at the speed of value, yeah. I'm sorry, Bob, because I know he watches these. But when I think back to when we went to AMI, that's smart meters, for those of you that aren't aware. Smart meter goes on your house, and it really eliminated, I don't know how many, you probably know the exact stat of how many folks we had that would walk through your backyard and read meters for us. And I think the amazing thing that Northwestern Energy does, and I tell this story all the time, we probably had, the number, how many was it? How many?
Well, it depends on, in South Dakota and Nebraska, I don't know, maybe there were 12 to 17-ish, kind of full-time meter readers. So we had some part-time, so let's just say 20 people.
20 in South Dakota and Nebraska. Company-wide, we had a few more. The company.
Keep in mind, there was a large contingent of manual meter readers in Montana, but they had already gone to a drive-by.
That's right. They had the drive-by truck.
About 12 to 15 meter readers reading the whole state of Montana because of that.
So, one of the people that joined our team, the community relations managers, you guys went out and explained how you re-jobbed those people, re-careered them in all reality. Because some of them had been with you, well, the one I'm talking about started at Northwestern Energy cleaning the building at 16 years old, and to this day is still working for the company. So talk about that process, about how you guys took jobs that were going to be eliminated and found places where those people best served.
Yeah, so what we did was we literally sat down, with each of the individuals and to get an idea of what their aspirations were. Now, and there were some that were like, I'm willing to stay until I'm no longer needed, and then, my path is I want to retire, because that's where they were at in their career. And then, there were just a few that, we treated them fairly, but, there wasn't a seat on the bus for them. But for the most part, particularly the full-time employees that had been here, like the one you're referring to, we were able to find comparable or even better roles as far as pay. For them within the organization, and we held certain positions open because we knew that, in looking at their resume and interviewing them, we kind of knew that they would be a good fit for that. So we worked very hard on that. We had the same thing going on out in Montana. It's less of them, but the same thing going on where, I tend to believe that for the most part, if you're in a situation like that in a company like ours, and you really want to stay in the company, and you're committed to upskilling or reskilling, and you have a good reputation for being highly engaged and hardworking, you're going to land somewhere.
I just thought it was one of those things that just kind of explained who this company was and how they treat us as employees. Employees is such a big part of what makes Northwestern Energy. And you've been a part of several integrations of employee units, big integrations. And I don't know that that happens a lot in the energy business, but when you think about bringing South Dakota, Nebraska together with Montana, you think about the hydro, bringing all the hydro employees on in Montana. What were the challenges of that, and how in the world did you guys make it work so seamlessly? Because there really was no hiccups in service and reliability, in employee engagement, things like that. What was the secret there?
Well, if you go back to the Montana Power Northwestern Public Service merger, the thing that made that work from a service quality perspective was the fact that we were, at least initially out of the gate, with the exception of some corporate, finance systems, we were really running those companies separately from an operations perspective. I mean, they had their own standalone IT systems, their own call centers, and so we didn't really have, any significant operational conversions, if you will, to do, right out of the gate. On the hydros, we did. In one sense, they're a self-contained unit of about 85 individuals because they hadn't, necessarily been, the hydros versus coal strip is, two different things. And so but there was a lot of system IT work, to lift them out of there and bring them over to Northwestern so that we could monitor and continue to run those dams. The employee side was a little less complicated because they mostly, for the most part, they just stayed in their existing jobs. So like if you were a hydro operator at Madison, then you remained a hydro operator at Madison. And there were a handful of them, that we integrated into like human resources, or we got a community relations manager out of that, if you recall. And
Yep.
We didn't have to get that community relations manager because she could have stayed with what was PPL Montana at the time, now Talon. But I knew she wanted to come to Northwestern, and I knew she was awesome, and I knew we wanted her. And so I was like, there's an opportunity, we'll just put her on the list of employees that we want. And, she came over and, gave us a decade of successful, dedication and all of that, just recently retired. So there were a handful that we made some strategic moves, if you will.
And it's just, even internally, there's just not a lot of hiccups. There's not a lot of pushback and things like that, and everybody just instantly feels very, very comfortable with what we're doing and comfortable how the operation is, and that's.
I think the key there, though, Tom, is we've been fortunate that we haven't done an acquisition that required a significant restructuring right out of the gate or significant layoffs. I think we would be very cautious about something like that because there's a lot of social fallout that comes from that, and I don't think that's who Northwestern wants to be. I think the Energy West acquisition is another one where it's 55-ish employees, but we're going to make a job offer to all of them, and we're committed to that because it's our culture, and bad things come from not treating your employees well.
Yeah. Well, we're almost up against our time, but I want to get the personal side of Bobbi. I've known, obviously, Bobbi for 20 years, and we share a lot of the same interests. But if you know Bobbi from Big Sky, you probably know her to be skiing the double black diamonds and ripping it up with her family, and then probably the trails, the mountain bike. What keeps you busy?
Well, speaking of Big Sky, we are headed out there in April, so let's hope that the snow is still there. They've had decent snow coverage this winter. So we do still ski. Don't get out on my mountain bike as much as I did when I was younger, but we are going to actually go up to our place in Wisconsin in August and do some mountain biking up there because it's fantastic trails. What keeps me busy? I do go to the gym a lot. I go to, if you've never done it and you want to, I go to Solid Core sometime. It's one of the most fantastic, unique experiences you'll ever have, and you'll go in there thinking, yeah, I'm in good shape, my core is strong, and you'll realize it's not until you go a certain amount of time, and It's kind of like Pilates reform on steroids. So that, we do a little traveling. Now that our son lives up in the Twin Cities, we get up there probably a little bit more often than we used to see him and his fiance, or, go for a football game, or, Black Keys. I think that's the latest thing that he wants us to go to. So, but it's fun, we just run up there for a weekend and come back home.
And she's a gopher,
it's
right?
just enjoying Sioux Falls in South Dakota.
You're a gopher, so you cheer
I'm a
for the
gopher,
Gophers.
yeah, for better or for worse. I'm a gopher.
So, but
Like I always told my husband, if I went to Minnesota first and foremost for the academics, if I had been going just for the men's athletic programs, I might have looked at school. Although football program is adequate, hockey's good, of course, and now we'll see what that. I don't know if you saw today they just hired Colorado State's basketball coach.
Basketball coach, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what that means if you can get that program turned around.
Every once in a while, they have a good few years of basketball, and then there's maybe some stories in the news, and then they don't have a few good years of basketball. But Minnesota's they're great place to be from. We're glad to have you in South Dakota, and couldn't be more
we love
excited.
South Dakota. We love South Dakota. It's good people here.
And you do spend a lot of time in Montana too. That's the other thing, that when I travel with. Here's one thing: if you're at a dinner with Bobbi, don't order the wine. Let her take care of ordering the wine because she knows what to get. But traveling is another part of this job that you do a ton for the company.
Yeah, yep, I do. In fact, I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Chicago.
I was surprised we had you nailed down here, but I appreciate your time. I want to thank Bobbi Schroeppel for coming on the show, and obviously thank Lori Nelson for putting everything together. She did some of the decorating here. The plant is brought in as well. We had to make this really fancy, and obviously thank you for the funds that you give us to do little things like this, Bobbi. So Bobbi fights for us a little bit so that we can have some cool stuff in community relations and put things on like this. So appreciate you, and thanks for coming on the show.
You bet, Tom. Talk to you later.
That's a wrap on this week's episode of The Outlet. For more information and weekly energy updates, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or visit northwesternenergy.com.